Okay, so welcome back. As we start to write more Rust code, we'll find that some functions are a little trickier. They could either succeed or fail based on what they're doing. This is very similar to the idea of exceptions, and similar to the idea of exceptions in Java and Swift and a few of these other languages. If we have a piece of code which might fail, then we always have to use the result that it returns in order to make sure that things don't fail silently and disappear. It's not good. So in order to handle that, the standard Rust library has a result type. And these two parameters describe the data type for sort of success. So if the code executes successfully, then this data type will be returned. And if the code fails, then this E data type will be returned. And these are the members of the enum, but we can almost think of them as constructors. So, for instance, to make a bunch of these results, so there we have it. We can use them just like constructors. We pass in the value which we want to be returned. And we can also check, once something has returned a result, we can check whether that result was good or not. So for instance, we can go So this match is pretty much like a Rust version of a switch statement, based on whether the result has an OK value or an error value. They'll typically just have one or the other. What a nightmare it would be if they had both. Based on that, we can act appropriately. So the other thing is, how do we sort of propagate results? So yeah, we can do this with return statements, but there's a few other ways. Okay, one way to sort of propagate results is with this try macro. So this is a full thing, r#try, exclamation mark for macro. And what happens is might fail is some sort of general function which returns a result, and this tests if the result has an error value, and if it does, then it returns an error automatically. It sort of passes the same error. So if we have some error here, that gets passed through that error value and returned. And then if this succeeds, then it returns a simple success result type. By the way, in Rust, this return is optional. So you might see, if you look online, a lot of Rust code doesn't have the return statement. It's a little weird, but it is what it is. Okay, so there is a more concise way of doing this, which is more popular. And that is to simply put a question mark at the end of the function call. So when the compiler sees this, it knows, okay, this might, oh yeah, I'll go into this. So there's sort of two things we can do with results, because results are a composite data type. They have a success type and a data type, error type. So what we can do is if you're familiar with unwrapping from Swift, this will be sort of similar to that. A question mark sort of unwraps the error type from the return. And let's say we have a function which actually, it's not doing a blank return, it's actually got a useful return. I'm just going to call this T. Why not? Why not? So we'll go through this in an example of this in a second, but there are different types of things we can get back. Okay, now, if I call this and I want to get the success data type, then I call unwrap. And there's another thing we can do, and that is expect. And expect will do the same thing as unwrap, but it will also sort of throw an error. It'll panic, it'll throw an error if there's an error type in the result. So we can sort of think about it like, if we want to get the error type and nothing else, then we question mark. If you want to get the return type, then we unwrap. And if we want to get both, then we expect. If that makes sense. If this is just a useful way to think about it. But anyway, let's jump into some code. So I'm just going to get this set up. We'll go cargo, new. Just going to test setting up. STL. So for this, we're going to need the STL2 DLL, unless we've got it somewhere else. So we can actually put it in other locations and it will read it, but I like to keep it bundled up with the project just for portability. So we can fire this up. And declare that we're going to use STL, latest version. And then let's get to initializing. So if I want to initialize STL, that could succeed or fail. So my main function is now going to return a result, and I don't care what the success type is because I'm not using it anywhere. But if it fails, I want to sort of print something out. So what we can do is right now we can say, well, okay, that's good. Not very interesting. And then we can say, all right, let's print something. Let's say print line. Okay, just give that a shot. Let's give that a shot. Okay, cool, everything worked. Why wouldn't it? So let's get to some code which could actually cause errors. So it's important to get comfortable with reading the STL Rust binding documentation. It sort of starts off with a simple example here. So we have let STL context equals STL2 init unwrap. Okay, so let's have a look at that. We'll go. Okay, so let's just have a look at this right now. So when we say STL2 init, call that function, it returns a result of STL and string. We don't want that composite data type. We just want the success value. So I guess we could unwrap. You know, but I sort of prefer just to use the question mark. Okay, so then the next bit here in this documentation is we have using that. So we go get the video subsystem, and that is from STL context, call video, and again we get a result type, and I just want the success type, so I'll just query that there, and then we look back over here. Okay, so we've got context, video subsystem, okay, window. Let's go with that. Okay, so we'll just pass in some things. Rust. Okay, width will be, let's go 800, height 600. This is just the standard stuff. Now, see that this has returned a window builder. So what we want to do is call build. Let's give that a second. And now that returns a result which has a window, and the error type is a window build error. It's also, I'm seeing, it's also common practice to sort of throw these down on another line, sort of like modifiers in Swift UI. And we can put a few other things here. So see here, this function takes self and returns a mutable window. So in other words, it takes a reference of the thing that it's being called on, modifies it, and then returns the same object back, which is the reason that we can chain these things together. So again, calling window creates a window builder. Position centered consumes, it takes a mutable reference to a window builder, which is really the thing that it's being called on, modifies it appropriately, and yeah. Now we have build. Now we want to get the return value, so we could do that, but another option is expect. So as you can see, expect returns the OK, panics if it's an error. So we can put a message here, failed to build window. Okay, so we can run this, and it pops up for a second. And let me just, because we're not using this variable at the moment, if we preface it with an underscore, Rust will say, okay, I gotcha. Yeah, so as you can see, the window pops up for a second, and then we get this message. So that's pretty good. So yeah, we'll sort of leave that there for now. We're sort of going one step at a time, looking through topics, and yeah, today it was errors. So hopefully this is increasing your confidence, and yeah, I look to get into it again soon. All right, see you. Bye.